Coleman Madison, Representative Hall, Representative Debbie Wood, Senator Melson, and Representative Shaver. So at this point, those are the people that we have in attendance online, and we're sending the link to those that are waiting. Meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Allen, Baker, Chambliss, Justine, Madison, Elliott, Gavan, Hall, Hollis, Lamb, Lawrence, McCampbell, Milson, Moore, Paramore, Price, Sells, Sessions, Shaver, Shedd, Singleton,
Here.
Smitherman, Wagner, Wilcox, Wood.
Here.
Madam Chairman, you have a quorum.
Here. Okay, is there anybody besides Shaver? I heard Shaver, Wood. And Representative Shaver, do you have the whole group at SLC with you? I see Jason nodding his head. So if you would text me anybody that's there with you, I'd greatly appreciate it so we can keep up with it. All right. We're going to start off with new business. I apologize for the delay. ALDOT update annual fund allocation. Mr. Harris, will you be giving the presentation? Okay, Ed, thank you. Mr. Austin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You should have a 4-page document in front of you that says draft fund allocation plan. This is consistent with the document that we have provided for the committee for the last several years. Starts off talking about our total program budgets for our federal funds, both the legacy programs and the new programs that were established with the creation of the IIJA 3 years ago, an amount for State Public Road and Bridge and Rebuild Alabama Act funds.
Well, there.
Below that, we show a breakdown of the federal funds. That in red, obviously, is from the new programs that were created, those 5 programs at the bottom that we've discussed in previous meetings. You see the aids to locals, a little over $137 million. Our Garvey A-Trip payments, almost 64. Garvey for CBD, Central Business District in Birmingham, is about 45. Approximately 48 million allocated for safety. Interstate maintenance, 180 million. State route resurfacing, 232 million. System enhancement is about 173 million. Bridge replacements through the old legacy programs this year is 92 million. Statewide planning, a little over 19.5 million. And then the 5 new programs that were established through IIJA, carbon reduction, about 25.5 million. Protect is a little over 29, that's the resiliency program. The bridge formula program, in addition to the normal bridge program, is an additional 45 million. Electric vehicle formula program, you've probably heard it called NEVI, National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure. Right. That is just under 17 million. That is currently led by ADECA. And then the ferry boats and terminals is about $335,000 this year. So that's the 1.1 total for our federal funds. The second page, we got you a breakdown for the state public road and bridge funds. Matching for our federal funds is about $181.5 million. The required non-federal part for the Garvey bonds is 2.2 and 1.6. State routine maintenance is 157.5. State roadway maintenance is 5. The PE for our state resurfacing, it takes about $5 million a year to develop the plans and all that we have to do from an engineering perspective to address those projects every year. Our state bridge maintenance fund is 6.5, state traffic maintenance 2.5, miscellaneous 3.5, and emergency maintenance about $5 million. State construction just under 22. Administrative overhead is 95 million. Other equipment is 12 million. Land and buildings 9. The support salaries for county engineers is 8.63 this year. That number changes pretty much every year. The industrial access appropriation as required by law is $11 million. State comptroller has paid about $670,000 this year. Captive counties insurance going back several decades is about $125,000. Revenue department is just under $3 million this year. We still have a $1.2 million transfer to ALEA, and you see the ACT number there that references that. $2.85 million to state personnel, $500,000 that goes to state parks. Insurance and maintenance is about $1.5 million, about $250,000 for the Division of Procurement, and then finally about $2.3 million for the Division of Risk Management. So that encompasses the $540 million total for state public road and bridge funds. Third page, we get a breakdown for the Rebuild Alabama Act funds, $220 million this year. A-Trip 2 was programmed for $40 million. The awards were made late January of this year. Local assistance program is $15 million. That's the annual grant program. We raised that this year from $10 million to $15 million. We're still getting really good feedback and interest in that program. We had over $50 million worth of requests this year. The second round announcements were made a week or two ago. We'll have one more round of that this year, probably sometime around mid-September. System enhancement and economic development are both $62 million. Those are just planned numbers. Those will fluctuate a little bit based on actual costs, but we try to keep an even distribution of the remaining funds between system enhancement and economic development as the law dictates. And then a little over $14 million for matching of federal aid this year. Went ahead and gave you some numbers for next year, keeping in mind that not all of those are set. So A-Trip 2, I put it at $40 million again next year, but that number can fluctuate between $30 and $50 million. So that number will be set later in the year when we send the information out, probably in August or September. Local assistance program, the annual grant program, again, $15 million will be planned for next year. And I left off, the county federal fund exchange. That's the swap that we do with the counties. Every county used to receive $533,000 of federal money. We give them a portion of Rebuild Alabama Act money now in a swap for that money. And so that's 26.8, it's $400,000 that go to all 67 counties for their use on roads on their system. Same thing with 25, showing us just a split between system enhancement and economic development and projecting the same approximately $14 million worth of match requirements next year. One thing I'd point out in system preservation is shown as zero again. As we've talked about in previous meetings, that may require increasing to ensure matching for the federal aid is sufficient. But so far we have not had to do that. The last page is the breakdown of our system enhancement and economic development funding. This was a request that was made by, I think, either the chair or the vice chair a year or so ago. So we've been adding this to it for the last couple of years. This year, we're going to use $173 million for federal funds and state match to do system enhancement and economic development, about $10 million of our state funds, and about $124 million of Rebuild Alabama Act funds for about $307 million total. Next year, we're projecting the same general range for those numbers. We'll have a better idea of that next year. Madam Chair, that's the report for the allocation plan.
All right, do the members have questions? Mr. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Austin, I think you touched on this, but I was a little behind. The county federal aid swap that we did, what is the backlog and how long do we think it's going to take before we get that finished out?
So the county federal aid swap has completed. There was a 3-year window for that to finish. That finished this past December.
Okay.
So this will be, I'll do my best not to get too deep in the woods
Yeah,
on this. So you remember when you were at a county how it works, you would authorize an amount of money, start the project. If there was an underrun on that project, it doesn't come back till it closes out. We're still trying to do closeout, but all the money, federal aid money that was allocated has been utilized. There is no more allocations from a federal fund standpoint to the counties. we're doing cleanup now
Okay,
on
so
the
y'all
county
close to
balances.
being done with that.
We are. A few $1,000,000, I think, is where we are right now. It's not a big number.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Right, Senator Elliott and then Senator Sessions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got two quick questions, Ed. If I can, we can go back to page 1 on the Garvey bonds for A-1 and the Central Business District payments. Do you have any idea when those bonds get paid off? How long is that going to be part of our budget?
So let me confirm this. I think it's 38, Senator. It might be 37, but here's how the bond indebtedness is being done. A-Trip was started first. CBD came later. So in order to levelize our billing, we're putting the majority of that towards A-Trip. A-Trip actually finishes up in 31, I think. Again, let me confirm that number for you. But the debt service payment stays the same until 37 because we're doing a catch-up on CBD. So it's the same total debt service through 37, a little over 110 million between everything.
Very good. And then the second question, I'm glad that you pointed out on page 3 the system preservation with your 2 asterisks there. This is may require increasing to ensure sufficient matching funds for IIJA. Do you anticipate an additional general fund request? Obviously, what you're getting at there is we may need more money to match the federal money that's out there, right?
So up to this point, we have not had to use Rebuild Alabama Act money to match federal funds. There's a 2% escalation built into IIJA every year. The possibility is we might need to use some of it. Right now, we do not forecast that we'll need to. To your question on the general fund, no, sir. To my knowledge, we do not have any intention of addressing or asking for a general fund from an ALDOT perspective currently.
Okay, so your plan is to use rebuild money instead of asking for more general fund money?
To do what specifically?
If you need additional funding?
Yes, we would use, not general fund money because we don't receive any general fund money. We would use our state public road and bridge funds. If you look on page 2, that 181.5 million, that number may have to go up some. And if it does, we would have to figure out where we would rearrange some things, or we could take it from our rebuild money, correct?
I understand. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thanks, Ed.
Representative Sessions and then Senator Sessions and then Representative Moore.
Okay, thought you'd give me a promotion there. Question on revenue. The Rebuild Alabama Act revenue, is it flat? Has it been flat the last couple of years, or has it been increasing a little bit, or where are you at there with that since it's fully implemented?
Sure. So we've been relatively flat on both State Public Road and Bridge and Rebuild, with the caveat being when the legislature passed the Rebuild Alabama Act, there was an adjustment in there every other year. There's the possibility of an index that can go as high as 1 cent or as low as 1 cent, depending on an indexing measure that was put in the law. We qualified for the full 1 cent last year, so that went into effect. We're collecting the first full year of it this year. That's generated 25 million that came to ALDOT, Senator. But beyond that, our revenue has been basically stagnant or flat in both programs.
Next question is, when we passed this, there was a lot of information on rural areas to where we had a lot of bridges that were in desperate need of repair, school buses going a lot of extra miles and all. Could someone with ALDOT get me a number of how many of those have been repaired and where we're at there?
Sure.
It just popped in my head. I'm curious, and I'd just like to know.
Sure. So let me clarify your question to make sure I understand. Are you wanting them that are on the state system, or do you want all bridges, regardless of it being like city, county?
All.
All. Okay, that will take us a little while because if the city or county did not coordinate through us, we'll have to make an inquiry with those. It will take a little while, but we'll get you that information.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So you were referencing that potentially down the road we might need some additional funds, but you're saying that to match federal dollars. So would that you're saying would come from the Rebuild Alabama Act? Is that what y'all are looking at?
Well, what we're saying there is so far to this point of the Rebuild Alabama Act, we have not had to use any of those funds to match federal dollars to do system preservation. So the law is set up in such a way that we can, that is an eligible use to ALDOT is for system preservation. What we had proposed to do is to minimize that when the law first passed. So far, we've been able to stick to that commitment, but when we made it, it was before IIJA was passed, creating a much larger federal pool of money. So we've always put this caveat on the fund allocation plan to say it's an eligible use. If we get to a point where we have to use it, this is an option. So far, we have not.
Okay, are y'all getting close to that amount? Where y'all?
Well, our goal is to always be close to it. It'd be right up to zero. So, but no, sir, we have not had to use it yet. That's the point I was wanting to make sure we conveyed here.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Representative Sales?
Yes, could you speak briefly about carbon reduction and the Protect program on page 1?
Yes, sir. So carbon reduction, about 25 million. Those are projects that we have to show to Federal Highway a direct benefit to reducing carbon emissions, things like auxiliary lanes, sidewalks. We use it to do things like our traffic operations centers where we watch for accidents, traffic congestion so that we can change the signal timing on a signal to move traffic so that they're not sitting in traffic. Those are the kinds of things we've used primarily for carbon reduction so far. Protect. So Protect is a resiliency-based program. So what we're trying to address with there is areas that could be impacted by storms, flooding, those types of things. And we have used that on roadways and bridges in those areas. Yes, sir.
On your ferry program, page 1, I know that there was an opportunity to submit an application for grant funding for the new Dolphin Island ferry. Can you tell me what happened with that this year?
Yes, ma'am. So as part of a discretionary grant, you have to do a benefit cost analysis, which shows that the benefit of the project exceeds the cost you would require. Unfortunately, the ferry cost is in the mid to upper 20 millions, and the benefit cost did not exceed 1. And so as a result, you can submit one, but it doesn't meet eligibility requirements. So we're working with Hornblower, the company that manages that, to try to figure out some other options that we can go through. But we went through several contortions on that, trying to get a BCA that would at least meet the eligibility requirements, Representative, and we could not get there because the ferry is just so expensive, $25+ million. And you see we get $330,000 to address the needs there this year.
Senator Sessions, did you have some thoughts on that?
Well, I just wanted to add one comment on that. I know it is very expensive and perhaps it doesn't always pay for itself, but it's very, very important to have those ferries working. We had a wreck down there last week, and the bridge was shut down for about 6 hours. And so the ferry was extremely important and extremely busy, especially people that were needing to get to the other side of that bay.
Sure.
And some folks that were wanting to get to this side. So just a nugget of information.
And appreciate that. I guess my request would be if you can think of some way to reduce cost or increase the benefit, we'd be open to having those discussions. Like I said, we worked with our staff, consulting firm, and even asked the Hornblower to give us some guidance. They work with several states, including Washington State, who has more ferries than anybody in the country, just to try to figure out some ways to meet the requirement, and we just couldn't get it there this year.
Well, I would be interested in digging down deeper in that process and then also seeing on the carbon reduction how you might get slided in under that, but or show the benefit on that side of it. That I know there were some options of putting some electrification to it that would make it benefit a couple of different slots that you have to fill or checks that you have to do. But I do want to look and see that. I didn't ask why y'all were doing it because it was time sensitive, but I would like to learn more about that process.
I'll be glad to.
And I'm sure Representative Brown and Senator Sessions would like to be there too.
Yeah, I can get you, Matt and his team if we're the running point on this primarily, Representative. So you feel free to give him a call or let me know, and I'll get him to get in touch with you.
Thank you. Do any of the members have any further questions on the annual fund allocation plan update? Hearing none others, thank you so much.
Thank you.
ALDOT STIP update, Tony Harris and Jason, you were going to pull that up? The STIP?
all of you should have a one-page fact sheet about the statewide transportation improvement program. Required by law that we give you an update at this meeting. The current STIP covers the fiscal year period 2024 through 2027. You'll see information in one of the bullet points on your fact sheet where you can find that full state-wide transportation improvement program report on the ALDOT website. It's designed in a way to be interactive and searchable. You can search it by region, by county, and break down to your specific area. The projects that are in the STIP are divided by categories, pre-construction, right-of-way. It tells you what phase you can anticipate us to be in year by year, moving through the 4 years covered by the plan. So all that information is at your disposal on the ALDOT website. We do not bring you a printed copy because it would be nearly 500 pages per report. So we feel like it's a very efficient way to provide that to you online.
And right now, Jason has it up on the board, and if anybody has
Good.
questions about their county, Jason can also pull that up for you. So we do have the opportunity for you to ask questions. Sorry, go ahead.
So one of the things that we feel like is important is that if you do have questions, you can call me or your region engineer. You could even bother Ed, but I'm always available. And the way I go through it with someone, if you have questions, I just try to be at my computer where I can get on the computer, walk through it with you so that I can search through and help find the information. We can compare notes and find everything you may need to know. And then if you need additional information beyond that, I'm always happy to run it down for you.
Do we have any members with questions about the STIP or your area?
No.
All right, was that you, Representative Wood?
No, that was Coleman Madison.
No, not me.
Senator Coleman Madison,
That
you're
was Coleman.
recognized.
No, I didn't have any questions. I did, well, one, I know they mentioned in the report about the bridge. Do we have it on the bridge replacements? Because there was some, do we have any status on that?
Which bridge specifically?
I don't have any. I just know that we, at one time, we had a list, and I was just wondering if you had any updates, anything that you could provide just throughout the state of where we are with that.
Okay. The state bridge replacement program, with the funds we have allocated each year, we average somewhere between 8 and 12 bridge replacements per year on the state system.
Okay.
There are additional funds available for local governments to use in a variety of different ways, including through the 2 grant programs created under the Rebuild Alabama Act. So quite a few of the grant projects you see each year to local governments are bridge replacement or bridge improvement projects.
All right, okay. All right, thank you.
Senator Coleman Madison, Senator Sessions had requested an update on the bridges that were impassable for school buses. And Mr.
Right.
Austin and the ALDOT staff are going to get that. And we'll make sure to distribute that to the whole committee.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Might be a good agenda item for the October meeting, Madam Chair, to come back and visit that then.
Noted, thank you. Any other questions on the STIP? Anybody remotely have any questions on the STIP? All right, we'll move on to the ALDOT pavement preservation.
Thank you, members.
Clay, yes, thank you, sir. Thank you, Clay. You're recognized.
Y'all should all have a copy of the presentation in front of you. Does anyone need one? I brought some extras. This is just a quick overview of our pavement preservation program. So I want to put it back up. All right, first thing, just to kind of give you an overview of our pavement network. This drawing is just our national highway system routes in the state. This doesn't include all state routes. You can see the interstates in blue and the other state routes that are on the national highway system. We have 3 levels on our routes: the interstate system, which is obviously national highway system, the non-interstate system, which is certain routes are designated that, not all state routes, as I mentioned, and then you have other non-NHS routes, other state routes. We have 2 levels of routes for paving. We have the interstate, and then we classify everything else as non-interstate. Just to give you a quick look at how many centerline miles we have, I won't go into this, but we have roughly 1,000, a little over 1,000 miles, centerline miles of interstate, about 9,900 of non-interstate miles, for a total of almost 11,000 miles. We go through to determine, it's not just by the seat of our pants, we go through and use certain measures to determine what's the pavement like, what condition is it in. And for interstate routes, we do that annually. Also for non-interstate national highway routes, we do it annually. For not off-system, but non-national highway routes, we'll do it every 2 years. And we do things like this. This is where we determine the rutting on the pavement. The red boxes that you see here are just the outline of the wheel paths. It detects and classifies different kinds of cracking and damage to the pavement. And what the system does, it measures the lengths of the cracks within the red boxes that you see. What we do is we take all kinds of data to try to get some kind of condition rating on our pavements. And that's obviously extremely helpful in us determining where to spend the funds we have. We usually look at 4 parameters: the ride, the structure, the safety, and the lifespan. They're all averaged in what's called a pavement condition rating. And we take that rating, it's from 0 to 100. And a good payment's 70 to 100, fair is 55 to 70, and marginal payments are between 0 and 55. This is an example of after all that evaluation's done. This is an example. This is down in the Troy area. And this shows the different conditions. As you can see, the red is the marginal payments less than 55. And then you have the others shown here. So this is a great benefit to our areas and regions in determining where pavement needs to be reworked. And how we program. Our intent for the interstate is we try to address every year 60 to 70 centerline miles, okay? That gives a recycling time of roughly a little over 14 years, okay? So we hit that same pavement about every 14 years. Non-interstate, we try to address between 600 and 625 centerline miles per year. And that roughly turns into a cycle of hitting that pavement of every 16 years. Now, obviously, those cycles, that's a goal, and those cycles are impacted by the condition of the pavement and the cost of projects. Our program procedures and policies, we have a pavement preservation policy. And what we do is try to match that pavement after we've reviewed it to the appropriate treatment that's needed. And our intent is to keep it in good condition and keep it cost effective, where we don't have to go in and do a major rehabilitation on a road as less as we can. There's 3 types of things that fall under this pavement preservation policy. We have a surface treatment, which is PMA1, upper layer treatments, which is PM2, and middle layer treatments, which is minor rehabilitation. And what this stuff does, it allows our districts and areas to identify those pavements in their areas that are in good condition, that don't need to be repaved, all the way down to the marginal. So it allows them to develop their own program. And that program is taken and put into a statewide program based on the funding that we have. Another thing we look at is the competition in those areas for the contractors. Obviously, we'll want as much competition as we can get. And one of the major factors in that is where the plants are, the asphalt plants are. So we actually keep up with how many projects there are in that area that are close enough within 30 miles of that plant. And then we even have a drawing, and unfortunately, some of it didn't show up because it was a radius on here of 30 miles out. And we can analyze, do we have competition in that area or not? some of the things we look at, some of the stuff, and I just wanted to show you some of this equipment. We measure pavement strength by using this falling weight deflectometer, where it just drops away. We have another one that determines the friction factors. This is where it goes down the road and then the wheels lock up in the back and it analyzes the friction. Of course, we do core borings, obviously. And then we also look, an important factor is obviously traffic crash data. We take all that into account. And traffic volume data. And that's just an example of near Alabaster here. Another factor is all those things go into the materials report. And every project has a materials report. And that the intent of that materials report is to ensure that the treatment applied produces what we want to produce. Get it back to that grade we want it to get to. Like I said, every construction plan has to have it. We don't even proceed without it, that materials report. Of course, then we let it to bid. Our paving program usually is based on a fiscal year. Non-interstate projects, we usually let them start in November. We want to be complete by May. That allows the contractors to schedule things and try to get that work done that year. We don't want it to go to the next year. Interstate paving projects, we let those all the way throughout the year. There may be a delay special provision in there if it's getting into wintertime or something like that, but we let interstate paving projects year round. And this is just an example of one of our projects. I didn't want to go too in depth. And then this is the materials buildup. These can get fairly complicated depending on what type of project it is, what's involved. And really, that was it.
Representative Sells, you're recognized.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that presentation. Do you, can you give me an example and tell me maybe how many roads we have that this core sample here is 9.5 inches thick? How often do we find a road that has that much?
Well, the interstates will, and there are certain states routes that will, but I don't have exactly how much that would be.
But mostly that's on like an interstate road.
Yeah, it's going to be the heavier routes.
That's what I thought.
You know, obviously, the lower extent would be the counties or city routes where it can be just, we've seen them where it's just an inch of asphalt.
Right. Well, I'm surprised they didn't have a group of concrete in there with it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman?
You're recognized.
Yes. Could you tell me on the average of what it costs per mile of asphalt now? Has inflation really hit you? And what is that inflationary number looks like in asphalt?
No, I don't have right now anything I can get it for you. I'll be glad to. The prices have changed dramatically. We have seen stabilization lately. But I can get you a per mile cost too, if you like it that way, or by a square yard cost.
Thank you.
Representative Moore, you're recognized.
Yes, I was wondering, is there a way you can email these slides to us? I'm young and I can see good, but I can't see that good.
Yeah,
It's so tiny on these pages.
Matter of fact,
Go back.
they must have run.
Representative Moore, she did send that, but she'll resend it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also have some here. They're just 2 per page,
Thank you.
if y'all like them.
Yeah.
Any questions online? Do I hear anybody need recognition? All right, anybody here present have a question on the pavement preservation? All right, thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
All right, we promised y'all a brief meeting. The 2024 roadshow is going to be lined up with the Ports and Waterways Committee, where we'll be going to some of the inland ports. So we're going to pick 3 out of these 5 locations listed on your agenda, and we're going to go and see the transportation issues as it relates to our ports and waterways, because since this is the Joint Transportation Committee, we're trying to look at all phases of transportation, and that will be the 2024 roadshow. We'll send out those dates. We're looking in October, so I look forward to having some of y'all travel with us to those. Okay. Did I hear somebody needing recognized online? All right, I'm sorry, I just must be hearing some feedback. Any other business or any other questions from the committee?
I just want to thank staff for organizing this for those of us who couldn't be there.
Yes, thank you, Vaughn and Jason. Jason's been working hard back there in his room in room 200, and Vaughn has been working herself pretty frazzled to make sure that everybody got the information they needed right up to the meeting time and afterwards. Thank you for that appreciation, Senator.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir, you're recognized.
thank you very much. I just have a small request. It's a little bit of one, but it'll help out a lot. If when we send out notice, if we could send the line that allows us just to touch it, and we'll get on to the having to put all the different codes in, because the computer I'm using right now, I had to reset it up on Microsoft to be able to do that, versus just if it was emailed to me, you know, not the notice itself, but the hook on, that I could just touch it off my pad and instantly get on the meeting.
Yes, sir. Our clerk has heard your suggestion, and I'm sure she'll try to make sure she can get that done for you.
All right, thank you all very much.
It's a great meeting, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wood. We wish you a speedy recovery.
Thank you.
If there's no other business, do I hear a motion for adjournment? All right, so moved.
So moved, Madam
Seconded.
Chair.
We're adjourned. Thank y'all.
Thank you.